This week on Hometown Ghost Stories, Sharpsburg is a small town in the central panhandle of Maryland. It would otherwise be known as a quiet, innocuous town had it not been for one of the deadliest days in American history. In 1862, the Confederate Army marched into Sharpsburg and engaged Union forces in the bloodiest single day of the entire Civil War. Now, the town is haunted by the events of that fateful day, and it's said that the ghosts of some of the soldiers who lost their lives there still linger behind.
Hometown Ghost Stories contains serious and often distressing events and is not intended for all audiences. Viewer discretion is advised.
1862. She sat there at the foot of the undisturbed bed. The empty room was exactly as he left it, but the atmosphere was different. The furniture seemed foreign now that the person who had lived there was gone. A chair at a desk suddenly looked so empty, as if it had never been sat in. The bed, where she used to tuck in her little boy, now seemed so unfamiliar, as if it had never been slept in. The deep lines in her face illustrated her despair, which was punctuated by a frown that looked as if it were carved from wood. In her hand was a crinkled piece of paper, clutched so tightly that the knuckles turned white and trembled. The words on the paper cut through her like a razor. I feel how weak and fruitless must be any words of mine which should attempt to beguile you from the grief of a loss so overwhelming. The letter had arrived less than an hour ago, and she knew what it said before she opened it. A mother's intuition, although a mother she was no more. Robbed of the one thing that made her who she was, the only thing in her life that she considered to be of intrinsic value, gone, ripped away, her only son, a free-spirited young man at the age of 22, lying dead in a cornfield in Maryland among thousands of his brothers in arms. And the words on this paper were supposed to ease the pain. I pray that our Heavenly Father leave you only the cherished memory of the loved and lost, and the solemn pride that must be yours to have laid so costly a sacrifice upon the altar of freedom. She couldn't physically squeeze the letter any tighter, so in a gesture of frustration, she threw it to the floor, where it landed softly and harmlessly in a most unsatisfying manner. Just then, she felt a small hand on her shoulder, accompanied by a small voice, saying, "Don't cry, Mama. I'm with God now." She turned and saw her son, but he wasn't the man he was when he went off to fight for the Union. He was a little boy again, his skin pale and his hair waving as if in a breeze, although there was none to speak of. He looked at her with sorrowful eyes and offered a solemn smile before his image dissolved into thin air. I'm Dave Wilkins, and this is Hometown Ghost Stories, the ghosts of Antietam. The town of Sharpsburg, Maryland, was established in 1763 and was the first town in Washington County. The early residents of Sharpsburg in the 1760s were primarily of English and German extraction. Settlers continued to locate there throughout the remainder of the 18th century, establishing a flourishing commercial community. The town continued to grow throughout the 19th century with the construction of the Chesapeake and Ohio Canal, but in 1862, the town of Sharpsburg would go down in infamy when the bloodiest one-day battle of the Civil War was fought by Antietam Creek. The two armies, led by Generals George McClellan of the Union and Robert E. Lee of the Confederacy, met on September 17, 1862. Despite having many tactical advantages, General McClellan's overly cautious battle strategy led to the battle being a tactical draw, and both sides suffered mass casualties. Nearly 23,000 soldiers left the battlefield dead, wounded, or missing in what was by far the bloodiest day ever on American soil. The unprecedented loss of human life on that day has led to the area having a heavy feeling of melancholy and despair, and many visitors to the area have claimed paranormal experiences, some of which claiming to see the ghosts of the brave men who lost their lives on that fateful day. As Union soldiers stepped out onto the cornfield at dawn, September 17, 1862, Confederate troops unleashed a horrific volley. The single bloodiest day in American history had begun in earnest. For the next 4 hours, the cornfield was the center of a storm of lead, iron, and flame as Federal soldiers from the 1st and 12th Corps clashed with Lee's men. The cornfield changed hands again and again as both sides attacked and counterattacked. One soldier remembered, "The air seems full of leaden missiles. Rifles are shot to pieces in the hands of soldiers. Canteens and haversacks are riddled with bullets, and the dead and wounded go down in scores." More than 25,000 soldiers fought in and around the cornfield. By 9:30 in the morning, thousands of them lay dead and dying. Confederate General John Bell Hood wrote, "It was here that I witnessed the most terrible clash of arms by far that has occurred during the war." Union General Joseph Hooker remembered that every stalk of corn in the northern and greater part of the field was cut as closely as could have been done with a knife, and the slain lay in rows precisely as they stood in their ranks a few moments before. It was never my fortune to witness a more bloody, dismal battlefield. Recently, a class of boys from a private school took a field trip to the Antietam battlefield, and they experienced something strange. The teacher, a Civil War expert, was perplexed by the boys' claim of hearing the chanting of a phantom Christmas carol when they were near the watchtower at Bloody Lane. The teacher asked what Christmas carol exactly, and the boys said it was Deck the Halls, specifically the fa-la-la-la-la part. The teacher's confusion turned to shock when he pieced together exactly what they were hearing. Bloody Lane is probably the most infamous site of the Antietam battlefield. An estimated 5,500 men were killed or wounded in a 3.5-hour midday battle for Sunken Farm Road. It's a place known for courage, bravery, suffering, and death. Today, the dirt path with high banks is flanked by split rail fences and a few mounted markers. The banks are 3 to 6 feet higher than the dirt lane. The road was defended by 2,200 Confederates from Alabama and North Carolina under General D.H. Hill, who held off approaching Union troops for nearly 4 hours. It was a heavyweight shootout at close range. The Union approach was 700 yards wide, and many troops were in combat for the first time. The Confederates had a strong defensive position in and around the sunken road. Union reinforcements arrived, including the Irish Brigade from 69th New York Infantry, which lost 62% of its men in the attack. This brigade of Irishmen were volunteers who enlisted to fight for their adopted country in hopes to learn some battlefield skill to use later to liberate their own homeland. That day at Antietam, they were called on to make a frontal assault on a strongly held sunken road, bordered by a stout wooden fence. It was a naturally strong and defensive position, fronting on an open field. It was over this open country, without any protection and any support, that the men of the Irish Brigade were called on to attack. They charged forward, chanting a Gaelic battle cry, Fa Abala, meaning clear the way, across an open field towards their enemies, hidden in the sunken road behind a zigzagging fence. They suffered terrible losses, and although the charge was unsuccessful, it gave other Federal units enough time to flank the Confederate position. Today, Bloody Lane is said to be haunted by the many soldiers who died there. Phantom gunshots, accompanied by the smell of gunpowder, have been reported despite no actual gunfire occurring. Several visitors to the battlefield have claimed to see groups of men in Confederate uniforms, assuming they were reenactors, only to have them vanish into thin air. Most famously, however, are the reports of phantom Gaelic chanting from the ghosts of the 69th New York Brigade of Irishmen. Burnside Bridge was the spot of another bloody encounter during the battle. Union troops tried to force a crossing over Antietam Creek at the bridge and paid dearly for it. The troops could have easily forded the stream, but for some reason, General Burnside insisted on taking the bridge. The troops tried to funnel onto the bridge, but were mowed down by Confederate gunfire as they bottlenecked towards the entrance. Since then, there have been numerous visitors who have given eyewitness accounts of paranormal encounters. Many reports seeing ghostly figures, others seeing strange blue balls of light, and still more have heard the sounds of a phantom drummer and other battle sounds there. The location of the Dunker Church on the Antietam battlefield made it an important landmark because it was high on the ground in the center of the Confederate line. The Dunker Church was a visual reference point for both Confederates and Federals during the Battle of Antietam because its distinctive whitewashed walls stood out well in the geographical center of the battlefield. It was a foggy, rainy morning, and the smoke from the battle made it hard to identify the landmarks. Thomas Stonewall Jackson's men were encamped behind the Dunker Church and along the Confederate line north and south of the church. Being at the center of the battle, the church was surrounded by violent death for the entire day. During and after the battle, it was used as a field hospital, and for a time was the scene of a ghastly mass of the wounded and dying. Soldiers' limbs were hacked off by the score without anesthesia, and many were the men who died in agony there. Many visitors to the church have claimed to see phantom soldiers appearing and disappearing. Others have reported hearing the disembodied screams of dying men, and there are phantom bloodstains on the floorboards that will appear and disappear at random. 1976. The Pry House. The night sky glowed orange as the flames raging from the blown-out windows licked the night air, transforming the black sky to a vibrant shade of purple. Sergeant McDonough and his team were first on the scene, and he instructed his firefighters to hook up the hoses. Smoke was billowing out from beneath the roofing shingles, suggesting that the fire had reached all levels of the house. "We need to clear the house to make sure nobody's inside," he barked at his team. McDonough and 3 other firefighters approached the front door and attempted to open it, but it was stuck shut. They broke out the axes and chopped their way in. They could smell the smoke and burning wood through their masks, but couldn't see anything due to the thick black smoke that enveloped the entire interior of the house. As the team approached the stairs, McDonough put his hand up and shouted for them to stop. A loud creaking emanated from the ceiling as McDonough screamed to get out. The 4 firefighters scrambled for the front door as the second floor collapsed. Beams and chunks of plaster came crashing to the floor, but all 4 firefighters safely escaped the disaster. Deeming the structure too dangerous to send anyone in, the team of firefighters battled the conflagration with fire hoses from outside. A young firefighter from a neighboring town approached McDonough in a panic and pointed to the second floor window. The window was glowing orange, but no flames were coming from it. "There's a woman in that room. She just walked by the window," the young man excitedly explained. McDonough focused on the window with a look of confusion. "That's impossible," he explained. "I was just in there. There's no floor in that room." The Pry House served as Union General George McClellan's headquarters during the September 17, 1862 Battle of Antietam. As casualties mounted on the bloodiest day in American history, the Pry farmhouse and barn became a field hospital. Union General Israel Richardson was gravely wounded and taken to an upstairs room of the house. He lingered near death for over a month. His wife Frances made the trip down from Michigan to help care for her husband. But with her by his side, Richardson expired in November. Both General Richardson, as well as his wife Frances, are said to haunt the Pry House. During the fire of 1976, firefighters witnessed her apparition walking past a window. Initially concerned it was a person trapped in the fire, they were shocked to realize that there was no floor in that room, and a person simply could not have been walking around in there. A few weeks later, during renovations to repair the fire damage, passersby also witnessed a woman walking around on the second floor. To their surprise, they also learned that there was still no floor and it was impossible for someone to have been walking by that window. Some visitors to the house, which is now a museum, have complained of an inexplicable feeling of panic and anxiety. Paranormal enthusiasts believe this could be the disembodied emotions of Union soldiers who occupied the house in the days leading up to the battle. The Battle of Antietam will forever be remembered by its sheer brutality. A tactical draw that left both armies decimated, although both sides attempted to spin it as a victory. Lee and his army were able to escape back into Virginia without being pursued, and Lincoln used the battle as the catalyst to sign the Emancipation Proclamation, sealing the fate of the Confederacy by dissuading European countries to come to their aid. The loss of life on that rainy September day was unprecedented, and the subsequent despair that followed has lingered for over 160 years. Now, the blood-soaked ground where thousands lost their lives remains haunted by the ghosts of Antietam.
What is going on, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome into Hometown Ghost Stories, episode number 122. We're covering some more ghosts of the Civil War. I'm Jesse Wilkins. I'm joined by Rob Coakley. Hello, Rob.
I'm sorry that I have to start this episode with an apology, but in our Hometown Ghost Stories contracts, if you cover a Civil War episode, you are supposed to dress up as a general from the Civil War, and Dave did not follow the rules of our contract, so we are going to have to dock his pay, and we apologize to all our listeners.
Wow, you're going to go from $0 down to $0, Dave. I hate to break it to you, but little did you know, Rob, he actually did, and this is actually his getup. So for audio listeners, just know that he is in full Civil War general attire. Hi, Dave.
Hey, unfortunately, I'm wearing a gray shirt, so I guess that puts me on the wrong side. But, bummer.
Look at that. Well, this is a crazy battle, crazy episode. I'm excited to hop into it. I do want to thank everybody who's joining in live chat. So thank you everyone who's here. Tyler is new here. He just became a member. Papa Squatch gifted 10 Hometown Ghost Stories membership, and then Tess gifted 20 Hometown Ghost Stories memberships. So thank you guys so much for your generosity. It's always good to have you folks. We're excited. It's a big week for us. We're buckling
Very
up.
big week.
Heading down to Pennsylvania, heading in on Friday. And on Saturday and perhaps on Sunday, we will be at Pennhurst for the 2024 Paracon. Last year was a big success. A lot of people showed up, thousands of people. It was awesome. And we're excited to go back and rock and roll again. Another visit to Pennhurst, unbelievably haunted place. If you haven't yet, go back and check out our Pennhurst episode. For your discretion advised on that one, as it always is. It was a heavy episode, very, very sad and very dark place with a lot of twisted history. But this place.
So a year. Sorry.
Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
You're done talking. A year ago, we went down to Pennhurst last time. Rob and I took a day trip over to Gettysburg and to check out that battlefield. And that was a pretty cool experience. I actually picked up this book while we were down there. And it's writing from the Army of the Northern Virginia, collection of Confederate soldier correspondence that this author just compiled and put them all in. So this is actually really cool because I was able to find a whole bunch of letters from soldiers at Antietam that they had written. And it was really interesting. I couldn't really incorporate it into the episode because they're all really long, but it was awesome. And speaking of Gettysburg, some people might be wondering if they watched our Gettysburg episode, they might be saying something like, didn't you say that Gettysburg was the bloodiest battle in American history? And that is absolutely correct. Gettysburg is by a long shot, but Antietam is the bloodiest single day battle. So there wasn't a single, so Gettysburg went on for 3 days and Antietam went on for 1 day. And there wasn't one single day in Gettysburg that saw as much death as Antietam saw. So that's why you get the two figures there that can be kind of confusing.
Yeah, just 12 hours, right, for Antietam, roughly,
Yeah.
right around 12 hours and over 27,000 deaths. If I have that
23. 23,000 casualties. So that 23,000 figure includes deaths, it includes wounded, and it includes missing. Now, we talked about the missing figure in the Gettysburg episode also, and a large portion of that is people abandoning, especially in Antietam on the Confederate side, because while the war was going on in Southern territory, then they almost had to fight, right? You got an army invading your homeland, you have to fight to defend it. You don't have a choice. I think there was one soldier who was quoted when they asked, like, why are you fighting? And he answered, because you're here. So they had to, but as soon as they crossed over and started invading Union territory, a lot of those Confederate soldiers were like, I'm out. This was not what I signed up for. And Antietam was the first battle that took place on Union ground. So that's why there was a much larger missing person figure.
I can imagine. It's got to be so tough too. Like if you think back, I mean, obviously war in any situation is tough, and killing people has got to be tough. But when think about the Civil War and think back to Americans killing Americans, people you might know, could be friends. It's just such a weird situation, such a tragic battle, and everything. And this battle was nuts. For all of this to happen within one day. Crazy.
Yeah, absolutely. So the other part of that missing persons figure, we also mentioned this in the Gettysburg episode, was from canister shot. And this is incredibly disturbing. So canister shot was something, if you haven't heard that episode, that they would load into the cannons instead of cannonballs, and it would basically act like a shotgun blast, a bunch of small little marbles that would come out. And if it hit a person, it would completely liquefy them. So there would be no remains, there'd be nothing left. So there was a lot of that going on. So that was another contributing factor to the missing people figure. But this was
hang on, because your mic is doing weird things. All of a sudden, it sounds like you're underwater. But that is crazy to think about. We did talk about it in Gettysburg as well with the canister shot. It's such a crazy thing to think about. Do you know? Did they end up banning that from future wars, or did they stop using it when they stopped using cannons, or what happened? Because that sounds like something that the Geneva Convention would have taken care of.
Yeah, I don't know if that was the case. Is my mic okay?
Yeah, you sound good now.
Okay, I don't know if that was the case, or I would guess they stopped using it because they stopped using cannons. And there's not a lot of battles anymore where two armies march up on the front line and just shoot at each other from, not far away.
Which is insane.
It is. So here's some crazy. I'm going to hit you with some crazy figures real quick. So this battle
it stopped because Mel Gibson figured out how to do it.
He did. Yeah, that's got to be it. So 23,000 dead, wounded, or missing, which is 4 times the amount of casualties of American casualties at D-Day. Just to put that into perspective, and that 23,000 casualty figure is more than the American Revolution, the War of 1812, and the Mexican War combined in one day, which is absurd. You had 2,108 Union dead, 9,540 Union wounded, 753 Union missing, for a total of 12,401, which was 25% of the troops that participated in that battle. And then on the other side, you had 1,546 Confederate dead, 7,752 wounded, 1,018 missing, for a total of 10,316, which was 31% of the people who participated in that battle. So staggering numbers. And it's kind of like that with every single battle of the Civil War. We just saw unprecedented death in this war over any other war leading up to that. And that the reason for that is because the technology and weapons had advanced a lot since the Revolutionary War, but they're still fighting the same way. They're lining up army to army, and they're using like repeater rifles and sharpshooter rifles and just far more advanced weaponry than they had in the Revolutionary War. So now you just have body parts and blood and just massive amounts of death, whereas you wouldn't have as much in previous wars.
Which it's insane that you don't see the evolution throughout the war either, right? I'm sure you do in some aspects, but just for them to continue to do this, just to continue to line up to do that. The thing I found really interesting with Antietam was the fact, did you hear about Robert E. Lee's plans just being found by Union troops? Just left at a battlefield, was wrapped around a cigar.
So there was so many tactical advantages that the Union had in this battle, there was absolutely no reason for this to be a tactical draw. Number one was they literally found Robert E. Lee's marching orders and they presented it to General McClellan, who was like, wow, we're definitely going to win this battle now, because how can we lose? We have this massive advantage. They also had a numbers advantage. It was like 78,000 to 38,000 or something like that, or 75,000 to 38,000. There's no reason this should have been a draw. It should have been an absolute slaughter, one-sided. And the problem was McClellan took those marching orders and sat on them for 18 hours and just couldn't make a decision what to do.
God. Imagine how wrinkled they were after that. Yeah. I'm surprised he didn't I'm surprised he didn't just smoke the cigar that it was wrapped around. But he actually got to Abraham Lincoln used this as a reason to demote him after the battle. He was like, "You idiot! Like, how'd you butt listen?" It wasn't necessarily that they didn't clearly win the battle. He was pissed that he let Robert E. Lee flee back to Virginia. He's like, why the hell didn't you pursue him? Chase him down, you idiot. So it was, certainly not his best day.
Right. So McClellan was too cautious. He sucked. But while the battle was a tactical draw, it was a strategic victory for the Union. And number one, they were able to spin it as a victory because Robert E. Lee, who was encroaching on Union land, ended up fleeing back to Virginia, number one. And number two, they were able to spin that, and Abraham Lincoln was able to sign the Emancipation Proclamation to end slavery. And that stopped England and France from joining with the side of the Confederate, which they were absolutely going to do. But nobody wanted to be on the fight against the side that's ending slavery. So that was a strategic win for the Union, obviously.
Speaking of strategic wins, Crazy Legs coming in and gifting us 10 Hometown Ghost Stories memberships on YouTube. Thank you so much, Crazy Legs. You and your Crazy Legs, both of them. Thank you. Appreciate that.
Love it. So I'm going to offer one little correction. I said at one point in this opening video, I said the brave men that fought. And while that might seem obvious, right? No women soldiers in the Civil War, right? Wrong. There was about an estimated 400 women soldiers in the Civil War. And I found this super interesting. So both the Union and Confederate armies forbid the enlistment of women, and women soldiers of the Civil War, therefore, even though they existed, they just assumed masculine names. They dressed like men, changed their names, and fought alongside the men. And there were, I think, 250 on the Confederate side and 150 or so estimated, because there's no way to get an actual number because they were lying about their identity. But I got a few here that we do know about, and I thought it was interesting, so I'll include it. We got Mary Owens, and she was discovered to be a woman after she was wounded in the arm. She returns to Pennsylvania to her home to a warm reception and press coverage. She had served for 18 months under the alias John Evans. Another one was Loretta Velasquez. She published her memoirs in 1876. She served the Confederacy as Lieutenant Harry Buford, a self-financed soldier, not officially attached to any regiment. Then there was Satronia Smith Hunt, and her obituary stated that she enlisted in Iowa regiment with her first husband. He died from battle wounds, but apparently she emerged from the war unscathed. And then it's cool. Yeah. There's Mary Stevens Jenkins, Sarah Edmonds Seal. I'm just going to go through the list of all 400. So you guys cool with that. But I thought it was super interesting because I had no idea that women actually fought in the Civil War, but they did. And I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
And worthy of mention.
Very Mulan.
Yeah. Very Mulan.
That wasn't in America.
All right.
That's true.
There's correlations to stories, Jesse. We'll teach you how to read it, comprehend the story at some point.
There's no way at this point. There's no shot you could teach me how to read. No shot. That ship has sailed, my friend.
Also, fair to mention Clara Barton, who she didn't fight, but she risked her life to bring supplies and support to the soldiers on the battlefield. One of those battles was Antietam, and then she went on to found the American Red Cross in 1881, which she ran until she was in her 80s, which is pretty cool also. So let's talk about some ghosts.
Let's do it.
Hell yeah. So there's a few locations on this battlefield that are pretty haunted, and I liked all of them. I think my favorite the favorite story was the Irishman, right? And it was the New York Brigade from Ireland. Well, they weren't from Ireland; they were from New York. But most of them were from Ireland, and I think there was like 600 or 700 altogether, and I think 500 of them end up dying on Bloody Lane. And they went into battle crying their battle cry, which was Fa Abala, and that's one of the hauntings that you can experience if you go to this area. And I thought that story with the school kids was pretty cool because you get a trip full of kids and they're just hanging out in the area, and they all start complaining or just start mentioning that they heard like a phantom Christmas carol, and the teacher's like, "What are you talking about? Christmas carol?" They're like, "Yeah, fa la 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 la," and he's like, "That's so weird." He's like, "That's really weird." And then he thought about it, and he's like, "Oh my god, that's the battle cry of the New York Regiment of Irishmen that was singing Fa Abala." And turns out that's actually a common haunting in that area. People hear the disembodied voices of those Irishmen calling out Fa Abala.
That's got to be terrifying as a child. Well, I guess it sounds like they didn't even think it was a haunting, right? They just thought they heard somebody singing. They weren't sure where it was coming from.
Mm-hmm.
And then to uncover that, you're not sleeping for the next 6 to 8 years, and you're going to therapy.
No, I know, seriously.
But in fairness, I mean, if it's the kids and they think they hear a Christmas carol, then that's not nearly as scary. It all depends on, again, we've talked about this before, it all depends on how it's being sung.
Yeah.
If it's being sung slowly and slightly off key, then any song becomes scary, including Christmas carols. But once you make that connection, what an eerie twist.
Do it. Sing it slowly and off key.
I won't do it. I sing too beautifully. That's the problem. And I'm not singing perfectly, so can't do it.
You don't want to do a deck the halls with balls of holly, fa la la la, real slow for us?
No.
Wow. You hate our listeners.
I love our listeners. Moving on.
So Bloody Lane is haunted by this fa la 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 ghost, and also this is another. So a lot of the hauntings at Antietam are pretty similar to the hauntings at Gettysburg. You get disembodied gunshots. You have disembodied cannon fire. The smell of gunpowder and gun smoke when reenactments aren't going on. So obviously, if there's a reenactment going on, you're going to expect to experience those things. But when people are there at night and none of that stuff's going on, you would not expect to experience those things. So that is pretty...
It stresses me out a little bit that you keep saying disembodied when there was cannons that were liquefying people.
Yeah, no, seriously. And another haunting that happens on Bloody Lane is several men in Confederate uniforms will just appear, and they walk the Bloody Lane, and then they disappear, and people will see that. And
they just start handing out Christmas gifts. What if they all just started doing Christmas things?
Yeah, have we ruled out that this isn't like a mall Santa haunting? Is there any malls near this?
I don't think so, but I could be wrong.
That's what I want. That's just to cheer it up a little bit, because this is overly tragic.
Yeah, it's just 122 episodes deep, and we haven't gotten a single mall Santa haunting yet. This is disappointing.
We're gonna start digging into the archives to find one.
That could be our upcoming Christmas special.
So we're going to hit on a few more places here, but I just wanted to bring up the fact that when we cover battlefields like this, right, we think of the people that passed away here tragically, that they're the ones that are haunting it. And as I was driving around listening to the history of Antietam and some of the people that actually survived it, right, and the amount of PTSD they had, I wonder if, like, just because you had that experience there, it's always in your mind if you're actually brought back there to haunt the area, even though you survived that specific situation. I don't think it's relegated to just the people that died. I think it could be anyone that was there. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. And there was a couple of hauntings in Antietam that were not from soldiers who died. It was from people who died later on. And we'll get to that when we talk about the Pry House. But first, I want to talk about Burnside Bridge, aka Roarback Bridge.
Just real quick, I do want to bring up Eric's comment, which he typed in all caps, which stressed me out because I scream read it in my head. But that's actually the point. Was the real reason a lot of the Union soldiers were Irish was because as soon as mass migration from Ireland happened at the same time, the Civil War was happening. And then he also brought up that they were basically getting shanghaied, and this is true. Basically,
from Ireland?
They would get no, not necessarily, but they would come over while migrating, and as soon as they get off the boat, they were just signing them right up to fight for the Union. I think you saw this in
Gangs of New York.
Gangs of New York. Yeah, they had that exact scene in there where they're just off the boat and all right, bye family, I got to go fight for the Union. And some of them, a lot of them never saw their families again. That was just it for them. So kind of reverse Shanghaied, as Eric says in all caps again.
Yes.
So
yeah, that's a good call. So Burnside Bridge, also known as Rohrback Bridge, it was called Rohrback before this battle. And then ever since the battle has been referred to as Burnside Bridge. It would be weird if General Burnside rolled up to the bridge that happened to be called Burnside Bridge. I was like, oh,
change it.
What a coincidence.
How'd they know I was coming to this bridge? We think he's going to pick this one.
That's why he was so adamant about defending the bridge. His troops were like, we could just ford the river. He's like, no, that's my bridge.
They're like, he's not going to give it up. It's got the same name as he is. He's going to protect that all day. So just protect the bridge at this point.
So General Ambrose Burnside pushed the Confederates back eventually after many defeated attempts. And the reason that he ended up being successful was the 51st Pennsylvania Regiment. And the reason for them fighting was really entertaining. So previously, this regiment had their whiskey rations taken away for abusing it. And they weren't pumped about that. So meanwhile, they're at this battle and they're trying to push back the Confederate forces. And just a side note, this was so lopsided. This was like the battle of the movie 300, where you had like an army of like 1 million go against 300, but the 300 were in this little area. So the big army had to bottleneck to get to them, and they just picked them off in small amounts, which is pretty much exactly what happened here. The Confederates had about 400 people defending this bridge, and Burnside had thousands of guys trying to capture the bridge. So they had sharpshooters that were perched out back, and they just had a couple of cannons, and they were just wiping people out as they tried to get across the bridge. So Burnside goes to the Pennsylvania Regiment 51. He said, "Will you take this bridge for me?" And then famously, Corporal Lewis Patterson of the 51st Pennsylvania responded, "Will you give us back our whiskey?" And they said, "Yes." So they went in and they took the bridge and they got their whiskey back.
Little did he know, he's like, hey, this bridge has the same name as I do. I actually want you to physically take the bridge and bring it to my house because that's mine. It's got my name.
What you guys don't know is that man is related to Whiskey Dave. It is an ancient ancestor. So
that's right. So Whiskey Dave, right? He was from the 1700s, like right after the Revolutionary War. But he fought. So this was pretty much when the Civil War started, was right after the Revolutionary War. Now, obviously the war didn't actually start, but turmoil started because these soldiers who just fought for their revolution and won were like, woohoo, we did it. We got rid of the tax, the heavily taxing British Empire, and now we're free from these taxes. And the first thing the American government did was started implementing all of the same taxes that the British were doing. So you immediately had people like Whiskey Dave right off the bat that were like, not cool. We're going to rebel now. And there were little rebellion skirmishes all over right after the Revolutionary War. And that was really kind of the beginning of the divide that led to the Civil War. So a little throwback to Whiskey Dave there. The real Whiskey Dave.
You do his name justice.
Yes.
Is what we will say.
Absolutely. So at the Burnside Bridge, there was so much death that many of the soldiers were just buried really quickly, and they were buried in unmarked graves around the bridge. And it's presumed that a lot of those bodies are still probably buried there. Because although after the fact they did exhume a whole bunch and bury them in cemeteries, you have to assume they probably didn't get to all of them. There's no way. So that's why people assume that this bridge is haunted, and visitors at night have reported seeing these balls of blue light moving around and the sound of a phantom drum playing the cadence as it fades into the night.
Yeah, you can definitely assume that. I mean, obviously, with this amount of death in one spot, there's plenty of reasons for this whole area to be haunted. And whenever you have situations like that, it can actually absolutely happen.
Yeah, definitely.
Anytime you have 45,000 men and 400 women, you can assume there's a lot of reasons to have blue balls as well.
Good call.
That's a good point.
We got Cold Warrior with $10 in super chat. It was a suck fest. Thank you, sir. But yeah, so Burnside Bridge, that's that haunting there. And then we have the Dunker Church, which was pretty much at the center of the battlefield. So this church building, which stood throughout the battle, saw all of the death that occurred at this battle, basically, because it all happened around this church. It's all pretty close proximity. You had the cornfield on one side, you had Sunken Road on another side, then you had the Antietam Creek, and everything kind of just happened with this church being the center point.
And it was also a hospital, so you also had plenty of death that happened inside as well, right?
Yep. So during the battle and after the battle ended up being a field hospital. Somebody in chat said that pretty much anything with a roof ended up being a field hospital, which is 100% true, because there was so many casualties at this battle and every battle at the Civil War that they just had to make use of every single building and structure and turn them into hospitals.
And a lot of time, both sides of the armies would be in those field hospitals. It wouldn't always exclusively be for the Union or the Confederacy. They would just kind of get whoever they could get them in there just to do what they could for them, which was not much.
Yeah, absolutely. And now the Civil War is so unique in that sense because these guys were all members of the army together before they divided into separate factions, right? So you got generals who are just generals of the United States Army, that some went off to fight for the South, some went off to fight for the North. A lot of these guys probably knew each other and knew each other pretty well. So it's not like any other war where you're fighting against foreign enemy. You're fighting with your brothers, right?
Yep.
So that's kind of, you wonder if it were the other way around and they were fighting a foreign enemy, if they would have shared hospitals like that. Possibly not.
Yeah, that's a valid point. I would assume not, although there are other instances of that happening too. So it's not a completely foreign concept, but it just happened much more during this particular war.
Yeah, for sure. But one of the hauntings at this church now are the phantom bloodstains that appear on the floor. And I always find this so interesting because it's not the first time we've heard of a haunting like this. I'm sure it won't be the last, but it's so different from other hauntings, right? If you subscribe to theories that ghosts are energy that's left behind, and whether you think it's an intelligent spirit or if you think it's just a repeat thing, residual haunting. What is this? What are phantom bloodstains? Is it paranormal or is it just something else?
Yeah, along with the phantom bloodstains, other ghost debris, I guess you would call it, like ectoplasm and stuff like that. How is that manifesting?
Right.
And that's a great question that we haven't come across it yet, but fingers crossed. I guess I want to see a bunch of blood just appear.
Right.
I mean, you know what I mean? Because for the evidence, but I kind of don't want to see it. I kind of don't want to see the blood appear.
I like the idea of just calling it ghost debris. That's a fun fact, a little term that you just came up with there. I like that. There's ghost debris all over the house. I got to clean up before we go.
Yeah. So I didn't know what else to call it because you think of ectoplasm, you think of the blood that we've seen, some other things. We'll lump it together as ghost debris.
Yeah. Well, in demonic hauntings, right? And this obviously I don't think is one of those, but in certain demonic hauntings that we've seen in the past, you might get visuals of blood dripping from a statue or a walls. Like we saw that in an episode you covered recently, Jesse, with the blood dripping down the walls from the attic.
Was it the Entity House? No,
Maybe.
It was the other one. No, it was the one that I did that was really similar to the Entity House. Forget, but yeah, that was weird because there was photos of him as well.
Yeah, which is crazy. But this seems more like bloodstains from that era that just either never went away or they just reappear for whatever reason. I think it's pretty strange. But the church also sees apparitions of soldiers that appear and disappear, freak people out, and all sorts of scary things like that. So this is one of the most haunted areas of the battlefield. But that will
expect to, because it just saw so much.
Yeah, not even so. Like it saw all the death right from the battle, and it also saw all of the negative energy from the trauma after the battle, all of the amputations and everything. Must have been a ton of negative energy in that building, and it's a pretty small building too. So, as far as hauntings go, I assume that one's a pretty serious one.
Pretty concentrated. Oh, Tess brings it up. It was the San Pedro house. Absolutely.
Oh, yep, exactly.
Haunting. Yep.
Thank you for the assist, Tess. So that takes us to the Pry House. Now, the Pry House was where General McClellan had his headquarters, and that's where he sat for pretty much the entire war, where he observed from the attic. There was a little hatch door that he was able to pop his head out of, and you could make the argument that he was a coward because he sat there with a large bulk of the army. The entire Union army didn't even fight in this battle. A lot of them hung back at the Pry House, and he just refused to send reinforcements when they were requested. He had General Hooker asking for reinforcements when he was getting mowed down in the cornfields, and the cornfields are so scary to think about because you can't see your enemy. You can't see where the bullets are coming from. You got to shoot at the sound of the gunshots and hope you're not shooting at your own people. Which happened. Yeah. It was just bullets flying everywhere. And then there was that one quote where one of the generals said that all the corn husks just got cut as if they were cut with a knife and the whole field was mowed down. Someone said there was so much blood in the cornfield, they were afraid the next crop was going to be red corn. So horrifying situation. Meanwhile, McClellan's sitting up at Pry House and his generals are asking for reinforcements. And he says, no, I don't think that would be prudent, and didn't send them. So
what was it? Then he cooked a steak while he was in the attic, laying in his bed.
What were you saying, Jesse?
Watching the Flintstones.
What was he doing the whole time?
This is how he was a defensive general. He was overly cautious. He refused to send reinforcements, but always requested reinforcements. He just didn't want to ever I think he was just afraid of just getting smoked. So he just played super defensive. Like, this battle should have been a blowout win for the Union, and it wasn't. But this is another house, the Pry House, which ended up being a field hospital. And when General Israel Richardson was mortally wounded, they took him back there, and they called his wife, who was out in Michigan, and she ended up making the trek down to Antietam to help nurse her husband back to health after the battle, obviously. But he didn't end up making it, and he died. So now this house sat for a century, and it was abandoned for a long time until there was a mysterious fire in 1976. And that's when the hauntings started. There weren't really any hauntings that were reported from this house before then, like between the battle. And maybe that was because the house was abandoned.
Because it was abandoned, no one's there to report it.
Yeah. Or the fire stirred up the energy in the house and stirred up the hauntings. So those are two theories there.
So after the fire, what happened? Did they renovate and turn it into a museum after that?
Exactly. So
it took a fire for them to be like, this should be a museum.
Well, I think it took the fire for them to be like, oh, this is a historic house, we should restore it, rather than knocking it down. And then I think that's probably what they did. But
you think the fire now, I agree. I think all buildings, historical, should be preserved. Keep those buildings.
Mm-hmm.
Don't knock them down. But you think the fire would have done the opposite, right? Where they're before the fire, they're like, oh, we hate this building. After the fire, like, actually, that reminds me. Let's put a lot of money into this thing. Like, it's going to cost way more to do it.
It's a call of action that happens with all of these buildings. The house right across the street from me right now, it's been sitting there decaying. It's a nightmare. And all of a sudden they finally have set these plans up to knock it down. And now the entire town is rallying. We have to save this house. Someone has to buy it. Someone has to restore it. You had 30 years to do it.
If they really wanted to save it, they would obviously light it on fire.
Yeah, you got to light it on fire first. But you just go to it all this time.
Please go to it. Please, for the love of God, Rob, go to a town meeting and present that idea. If we want to save it, we have to set it on fire first. This happened.
I just laid a whole document. Like, you're gonna watch episode 122 of Hometown Ghost Stories, Ghost of the Civil War, Antietam. You're gonna see what happened in Sharpsburg, Maryland. I'm gonna show you that the only way to save this house is to set it on fire so that we can kick up some of the ghostly activity, so that people remember the bloodiest battle of the entire Civil War that didn't happen here in Bridgewater, Massachusetts.
And it's all going down tonight on Monday Night Raw. I just can't stop cutting wrestling promos.
They just get up and just grab your 2 cans of gasoline and walk out of the room.
Who's with me?
Someone stop that man. Literally no one. Eric says, sorry if I stress you out with all my caps. No. It's just whenever I see caps, and I understand the idea was type in all caps so we see your question. Whenever I see all caps, I can't just read the comment in my head. I have to scream it in my mind. I have to scream all caps in my mind. I wasn't actually stressed out. I just in my head, I'm just screaming your comment. But it was actually a really good question. So I'm glad you did type it in all caps. That way we didn't miss it. But yes.
So this fire in 1976, which led to the hauntings, led to a pretty eerie haunting. Now, there's no evidence or anything that suggests that it's a malevolent haunting or a negative one, but it's eerie nonetheless. And it started during the fire when that crew of firefighters was trying to put out the flames, and they thought they saw somebody walking around on the second floor, and they were like, "Oh my God, there's somebody up there. We got to get them out." But the firefighter who was just in there said, no, there is no second floor. You did not see anybody walking around up there. That is impossible. Eerie, right? Now, you could write that off as saying, okay, he just saw like there's flames, there's shadows. Who knows what he saw? It could have been nothing. But you fast forward to the renovation, and multiple people saw the same apparition on different occasions. There were passersby who were walking by the house that said they saw somebody walking around up there. And the crew who was renovating the house also said that they saw somebody walking around on the second floor, and then found out that there was no floor and it was impossible. That crew quit.
Yeah, I can imagine.
And they didn't go back into the house because they were so freaked out. You were going to say something, Jesse?
Yeah, I was just going to say, because you see these things when there's renovations inside the house. And it's just so crazy that there wasn't a floor. Also, if the building is engulfed in flames, no one's just strolling by the window. They're jumping out that window.
True.
Just walking around. Oh, house on fire.
Well, I also think this goes back to some of the other hauntings we've covered in the past that we think sound funny, but we've talked about seeing apparitions and only half their body, right? Mm-hmm. Like in certain spots. And I think it could be sort of something like this. Just because the building doesn't exist there anymore doesn't mean, or parts of the building doesn't mean that's not where the residual haunting is happening, right? Because that's where the floor was, 100 years ago, 200 years ago. So sometimes it comes out looking a little funny or sounding funny, actually would be terrifying to see, or it's as terrifying as this one where a house is on fire, there's no floor, and yet someone is still standing in the window staring out at you.
Yeah, it's the same idea as when you see a ghost walk through a wall in a house. Right. And you'd say, well, that's weird. The ghost can walk through a wall. Ghosts must be, since they're see-through and transparent, must mean they can walk through walls. Maybe. But another theory is that when houses get renovated, you might put up a wall where there wasn't a wall before. And now that ghost is just going through its repetition. And where there used to be a doorway, now there isn't. And it walks through the wall.
Yep. Same thing with Elvis Presley's car situation, right? That was something.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it used to just look like it was driving into like a wall or something, but there used to be a garage there. So good call. I think it's.
We're sorry for the Elvis truthers. Obviously, he's still alive. He's doing fine, and we
He's
apologize
great.
for mentioning it again.
He's going to live another 100 years, actually, from what I understand.
Yep,
he's doing fine.
But yeah, that's Antietam. The battle was brutal, bloody, and I think it was actually the most Americans lost in one battle ever to this day, I believe.
In one day, right?
In one day, yes.
In one day, don't get it wrong, Dave.
Yeah.
Ooh, you are. We've already pissed off the Elvis people.
I know.
You really want to piss off the Civil War people? Because
I think you've done a great job with the Civil War.
Thank you.
Stuff.
Yeah, I think
we'll see. We will see, sir.
Fortunately, I don't think there's any.
Decide.
I don't think there's any Civil War people left. I think they all aged out.
Elvis.
It was a long
He's
time
the only
ago.
one. Elvis, the only one.
Elvis was in the Civil War. Yeah, that's what we need right now.
He's alive and he's a Civil War truther.
So many of those. Wow, what an episode. That's nuts. Absolutely nuts. So
heavy stuff.
Yeah, I'm jealous. When last time I actually went to Penhurst, you guys swung by Gettysburg, and I was unable to join. And this one,
well, you're going to beat us there by several hours this time. I think you got time to head over there by yourself.
You can go. You can get over there. You can do a reenactment.
How much do you think an Uber from Philadelphia to Maryland is going to be?
Don't go to Maryland. That's not where Gettysburg is.
No, Gettysburg is not.
I was talking about going to this one.
Okay,
yeah. That's where I was going. Yeah.
Yeah, you don't want to go.
I'm going to be pissed when I get my Uber all the way to Maryland. And be like, now where's Gettysburg? Oh God, if we didn't piss off the Civil War folks, they're pissed off now. All right, that's not what I meant. Anyways, dude,
right.
What an episode! What an episode!
Yeah. Do we want to go over some 5-star reviews?
Let's do it. I think we skipped last week, right?
Yeah, but before we do, I would like to say that we don't usually like completely pitch our Patreon but if you're not a Patreon member, I think this is the perfect week to sign up. We are going to drop our Hinsdale House investigation footage on Patreon on Friday. And we had to do an entire investigation episode because of what we caught on there. So if you're not on Patreon yet, sign up this week and be sure to check that out. So just wanted to bring that up before we get into some 5-star reviews. And the first one is from Mass Lass, titled UFOs, Vampires, and Ghosts. Oh my. And that's in reference to our latest paranormal update that we do for side content.
Which we also titled the same thing. Now, I don't know if these have anything to do with each other, but that's quite a coincidence.
It's like Burnside Bridge.
I know. Whoa.
She wrote, or he wrote, I have been listening to your podcast in my car. This latest podcast was absolutely one of the funniest episodes ever. I was laughing so hard I almost ran off the road. And yes, dinosaurs did have feathers and more than one. You guys are awesome. I disagree. I will fight to the death that not all dinosaurs had feathers.
Whoa, Tess just dropped $50 in super chat, says for the Uber and this amazing episode. Now I have to go to Gettysburg, Maryland. Thank you for that. That is actually awesome. And I do actually have to Uber from Philadelphia to Penhurst. So that's great. Awesome. Thank you so much, Tess. That's unbelievably generous. That's actually, I think that's your second donation.
Yeah.
Tonight, yeah.
Wow. What a legend.
Yeah.
Absolute legend. Hell yeah.
I also have a 5-star review from Shelly here. And she just wanted to tell us how much she loves our podcast. Like a lot of people, I have a lot going on in life, and Hometown Ghost Stories allows me to turn off my brain and just listen to the ghost stories and banter for a little bit. Lots of times I catch myself actually laughing out loud with you guys. I've just restarted listening to the episodes because I've tried listening to other podcasts, but none of them hold my attention the same way that HTGS does. However, I will be skipping the Night Hag episode this time around. That one gave me literal goose flesh. Sorry.
There it is.
Anyways, keep up the good work, guys. You're doing amazing. So
I was reading a Nick Cutter book like last week or the week before, The Deep, which was okay. But he used the term goose flesh. I'm like, you son of a bitch.
Yeah.
1-star review.
Yeah. Gonna fight.
I give it a 3-star review.
I will start the Battle of Antietam over people saying the words goose flesh.
Yeah, it makes me uncomfortable. Absolutely does. Thank you for the 5-star reviews. So the last one you said was sent on the one that was from Facebook, right?
Yes, that was from
Shelly.
That is
She's one way to do it. Hell yeah. So that's another way to do it. You can send it on to our Facebook page and we should see it. So you can see that one. And
anytime we can help you shut your brain off. Fun fact, Rob one time shut his brain off and forgot to turn it back on. To this day,
the guy that doesn't know where Ohio or Texas or Ireland is.
I know where they are. Okay,
he does.
Do you?
He's actually an expert. Yeah,
I can't prove it.
Let's thank our patrons real quick. Starting with Tess, who also a VIP patron. Woo. Absolute legend donating today. And thank you for being a VIP patron. Also, Dave D, Kate and Steve M, Blazora, Glitter Tees Camming from Washington, Siobhan, Not Sharon, Kelly C, Jennifer P, Nick, Donnie N, Inspires Gaming, Allison V, Robert H, Anna C, J9, Mallory K, Mom and Pops W, Lisa J, and Whiskey Dave, the bicycle boy of Plymouth. Thank you so much for being VIPs. You guys are absolute legends. And next up, let's go into the Warren's Wards.
Hang on, quick update from Papa Squatch. An Uber from Philadelphia to Sharpsburg, Maryland. It's only about $425.
Good.
Don't do it, Tess. I'm not going to do it. Anyways, let's also thank our Warren's Wards, starting off with Leslie F., Michelle McTibbles, Rachel G, Her Lady Spookship, Nefarious Chad Poles, Wahini, Pirate, I Am the Bridge Witch, and I Hate Rob, Julie Gooley, Eugene M, Kath Q, Liz Young, DC, Chris Connolly, LBPS founder, next HTGS guest. Chris, I believe we saw you last year at Penhurst, and we hope to see you again over there. That was fun. The other Rachel B, Sarah Cook, Stitch Kitten, Ambi Rose, Janice G, Lily, Rachel B, Rob the Soft Serve Man Coakley, a demon child that is planning a slow death on you. Okay.
Oh, good.
All right. Squatch.
Settling.
Blood puddles and ghost debris with blue balls. Steph A. That's my favorite of the day so far. T-Bone Snake Strangler and loving it. Thank you so much for being part of the Warren's Wars. Next up, we have the Ghost Pirate Mafia. And let's start that off with the one and only All caps. Jesse's pissed off Uber driver. That was fast. The potato gist, like poltergeist, but potato geist.
Potato geist.
Geist. Love that. West Virginia coal miner. I'm assuming the WV stands for West Virginia. Yes. WV coal miner. Hashtag Dave, please kill Rob. It's not what you think it is. Hey Siri, why did Dave screw up reading my name last episode? He sucks more than Rob does. We have Brianna, Miss Macabre, Team Jesse forever. Thank you.
Wow.
Yes, love that. That was actually me. So I signed up for our Patreon. Naroku, Cold Warrior, old school pimp with a limp that talks with a lisp, something like this. I had a lot of fun reading that. Insert old episode reference here. D from H-Town, under a platypus, under a Perry the platypus. Sarah B, Dominica, still waiting for you, the Winchester Mystery House. Rob did go there.
He did go there.
Yet. I'm assuming we're waiting for spooky season for that. We're gonna save some bangers for October, you know. Monster Mom 04, Ellie, Dark Snark, I Hate Jesse, also known as the soft serve manlet. Megan S, Morgan S. What does a house wear? A dress. Nice. Sharon V, Marie R. I like the idea of putting jokes in.
That's fun.
In chat. That's a lot of fun. Arcade Hunters, Wayne C. I don't know if I said Marie R, but I'm going to say it again just in case. Soft Serve Man, UAP with bright blue balls of light. Nancy, Crystal Quinn, Aaron A. Colby has rejoined the group. Rob Coakley's allegedly poorly. Ketchup, insert censored euphemism here. French fry jerk up party. Alicia E. Thick Boy is stoked. They are bringing Game 6 to the Garden. Let's go Bruins. P.S. Don't tell my wife. I said Rob sucks. Dave farts.
Wow. Oh, yeah. I'm telling your wife. I am telling her.
Was there a comma in there or?
No, it was all one word.
Oh, okay. I was going to say, I was like, is it Rob sucks and Dave farts or
nope.
Rob sucks, Dave farts?
That is what Rob sucks. Mm-hmm. Civil War Dave, little ghost arms and blue balls of light. General McClellan was full of ghost debris and a feathered dinosaur. Truther. Sam from the Paul, Joe R, Paul from St. Louis, Al Capone. I miss when the shows were all about me. Huggy Bear. Hard to choose, but I'm going to say Team Jesse. Solar Flare, Mariah M, Kiralee J. Well, that's my other Patreon, by the way. Kiralee J, Anthony under a platypus T. Jim tried to make Rob a vampire, but he has no neck. Brandon W. And page 2, I almost forgot. Hooply Whooply, Bridge Witch, and Corn Drew. Thank you guys so much for being members on Patreon. $3 a month will get you there. Ad-free episodes, early access to side content, especially you're going to want to be there for this Friday as we continue to absolutely just produce the episode for Friday.
Wow, very good job. You really sold that, Jesse. So I want to give people a little peek behind the curtain real quick. We got a lot of people that are like this last paranormal update. And I just remember the three of us after we recorded, like, I don't know if anyone's going to even want to listen to this.
We contemplated just deleting it. Like, guys, did we just talk about dinosaurs for 23 minutes of this episode? Whoops.
We were like, well, we'll see what people say. People will hate it. They'll stop listening. And it becomes this big, it's like half the patron names for this week.
It's amazing. What's funny is like people are like, these idiots are investigating paranormal occurrences and they're talking about dinosaurs. Do they think dinosaurs are paranormal? These fucking morons.
We did clear it up. Kind of. Now we kept going back to it. But anyways, it was a lot of fun. So Thank you to everybody who tuned in. If you are in the area, swing by Pennhurst on Saturday. We will be there for the Paracon. I'm excited for it. We're excited for it. Unless if I drive all the way to Maryland to look for Gettysburg or something, I should be back in time. We'll figure it out. Once again, huge shout out to Papa Squatch, Tess, Crazy Legs, and Cold Warrior for the donations today. And welcome in, Tyler. We love having you here. Anything else, gentlemen?
That's going to do it for me.
Cool. Stay tuned for more things. Apparently, we have a Rob joke coming after the show. And we'll catch you guys on Friday and then back on Tuesday for another live episode. Thank you so much. We'll see you.
Well, guys, I actually have some unfortunate news. I'm going to bring Dave and Jesse on screen real quick because I was going to tell a Civil War joke. However, guys, I generally don't like them.